Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster. I'm the host of the program. And as I oftentimes say, I'm going to bring you important people who have important messages for those of us who live in Stoughton and the surrounding communities. And today is no different. We are in the season of Lent. We are between Good Friday, let me see, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter. So I'm going to wish everyone a happy Easter now, just in case this program airs prior to that particular event. But today I have a special guest. He is a former chair of the select board, has been a select board member since 2012, and is about to turn over the reins to whoever is successful in the upcoming election on April 6th. And the person I'm speaking of is Select Board Member Bob O Reagan. Bob, welcome once again to Community Forum.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you, Joe.
Well, in terms of fine, I have a special relationship to you because you were a Select Board member around the time when I was interim town manager. And I know the election, as we clarified, was when you were sworn in was in 2012. And you have been and performed a number of things on behalf of the town. And I know you've served in a number of capacities. And I know normally I would have you talk about who you are, but I know that most people know who you are from all the committees that you had served on, even before you served on the select board. But what I would like you to do, let's have a little walk through your tenure. Let's talk about some of the high points, some of the low points, some of the things that were of importance to you, things that you felt that you were able to accomplish, and maybe things that you weren't able to. And then, of course, I'm going to have my hot button issues to bring to your attention. So I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Well, thank you. I have a picture of my swearing in that I have in my office, and Joseph Feaster is right there. So I see you often to remember that day, which was a great experience for me, and I really approached your question with a sense of gratitude to the people in Stoughton to giving me the chance to really see our community, make friends with a lot of people I never would have known before, experience things that I never expected to experience. And really from the inside of the select board, my takeaway, big picture, is that human nature being what it is so easy for people to get focused on granular topics. It's easy for us to understand. It's easy for us to pay attention to them and take our collective eyes off of the horizon. And then we wonder why we never get anywhere. And that was one of the things I tried to pay attention to on the board, was to deal with the immediate issues in the context of getting us as a community where we should be getting. Because I ran at a time when there was frustration that we seemed not to get anywhere, that we would be stuck in conflict and disagreement. And there's always going to be disagreement. There may always be conflict, but we still have to move ahead. So take some issues like water, like zoning, like the downtown, like the fire station, like the high school, all difficult issues. If they were easy and cheap, they would have been solved a long time ago. And because they're hard and difficult, and because we're so reliant on volunteers to do things, and stuff comes up, our attention gets moved. So when I look back and I think of the things that we were able to accomplish, I look at the things like well, let's go down. We have a new high school. I got to serve on the high school building committee. As a matter of fact, one of the high points for me was I made, as a member of the select Board of Selectmen at the time, the final presentation to the State Building Authority, High School Building Authority, for the grant. And part of that presentation was to roll together what that high school project meant to us as a community, how it fit into a master plan, which I remember being before the select board 2 years before I ran, trying to get us a master plan done. And it took the town 2 years to figure out that we could do it. So these things kind of coalesce. So that was huge. We have a new library. That was a big problem for years. We have a new water filtration system. Now that's sort of one of the details of town government. But without the water filtration system, we face two big issues. One is the cost of water from the MWRA, which would kill us. And the other was, because of where we get our water from wells and some of the minerals that are in water coming out of particularly wells with a lot of granite, there were issues with water quality that needed to be addressed. That's a big issue to cut us off of the necessity for expensive MWRA water. We got the Park Street Sewer Project going. That I think had been before town meeting 3 or 4 times. We got it going, and the way we set it up between new development, I think we have one expansion that happened 2 weeks after town meeting voted to approve it. A defense contractor. You imagine a defense contractor in Stoughton on cutting edge defense materials was going to move out of town. We saved them. They're expanding their building and they're adding jobs. And there are 4 other projects in the pipeline. We have grants maybe that'll pay for right now about half of that project, and the possibility even more than half based on some of the COVID relief funding that's coming in. So, I mean,
I just want to underscore and emphasize that point. That was the sewer line, which was one we went to meetings early on,
yeah,
with discussions on the sewer line, and it did languish for a period of time. And with your leadership and as well as Mark Tisdale leadership in the town engineer, that project has moved forward with even with state support. Let's talk. I want you to underscore the implications of that. I know there was resistance by residents and others who are down 27, what was going to be the cost of them if they got connected to the sewer line. We had some issues with regards to the quality of their septic systems and things of that nature. Let's talk a little bit about some of the issues. I know I'm going to have Mark Tisdale on in a couple of weeks and I'll go into more detail, but talk about the business implications, the impact on Stoughton as a whole if we're successful in getting that sewer line down Park Street.
right. First, the environmental impacts are staggering. When you dig into soil conditions in that area, it's got a high water table. There are many homes that have had flooding issues. As development goes on, of course, it disturbs the water table and water flow. So it helps with that because, and there are some businesses that have overflow, and what's overflowing is not pure clean spring water because of ground, septic systems. All right, so it's a significant health issue. The economic impact is huge. So let's look at the 4 or 5 known projects, and there's an opportunity for a hotel. I've heard in the Campanelli Industrial Park. What does that mean? Just in that park, okay? It means that you have new jobs for Stoughton people to go to. Good jobs, not retail clerical jobs, but managerial, professional, scientific, technical. Those are some of the jobs coming into the defense contractor. That's good for the town because it provides a place where people can have a family life and not spend a long time commuting. For the tax base, it's gigantic because expanding the tax base means we're able to do more for the community without breaking the backs of the residential taxpayers, particularly people, retired folks with less ability to afford a tax increase. Let's look at the effect where it can make the most difference to a large section, the school population. Our school system needs to do more and would do more. There isn't a nickel they spend that is not spent wisely. But the facilities need our support. South School needs to be done. The middle school should have been done, a long time ago. I think Wilkins School is up. We need to pay attention to these things. We're not able to do that without without imposing a lot of burden on residential taxpayers unless we build the tax base. The Park Street Sewer Project, is an important part of that. Imagine where we would be today, even on our current budget issues, if we had built the Park Street Sewer Project 10 or 15 years ago when it was first proposed. It would be paid for. The businesses would have been built up. Instead of largely warehouse use, they would be productive. And here's what's happening. Warehouse storage, servicing buildings there will be converted to active manufacturing, active research. Many of the areas that are now parking lot, because they're needed for their septic system, will be turned into productive building because they have a place for the sewage to go. And the number of people who can be in those buildings who use it can go up because of the capacity, for the groundwater treatment is different because you've got sewage. And then you have
So
the
that
spin-off.
addresses the economic piece, you address the environmental, and before we leave it, I wanted to be able to, and I'm only interjecting now because I want to have you address those who are saying, is going to cost me in order to be hooked up to the sewer system rather than on my septic system, and that's going to be a burden on me. I know
Let me
there have
deal
been
with that first
discussions
of
on
all.
how to address that. Can you address that particular point, Bob?
Many of the houses along that area have failed septic systems. So within a short period of time, and when they go to sell, it's likely they would have to do a Title V project. So those are the mounds we see. That's hugely expensive. The sewer line, you just connect up. So it is much, much cheaper. The number is large. The proportion is significant, failed septic systems. And the cost, for private systems, those have to be rebuilt, right? Every 20 or 30 years, most of them. That comes to an end because you don't need to do it. So if you've got a house that needs to pass Title V, or even a house that needs a septic fixed, what we need to do today is way different from what it was 5 and 10 years ago. And the environmental controls for groundwater disposal of septic are only getting tighter. So the homeowner looks at paying more.
Yeah, so there are some, again, those are the types of balances, but there are certain points you talked about, looking at it as opposed to the individual. We're speaking of it from the benefits to the town. There are economic benefits, there are business benefits, there are environmental benefits, and sometimes the individual has to be subjected to things which are better for the most, and that's something which we need to begin to take a look at. But I want to move on a bit because you and I were going to have a shorter conversation today, and another issue that has been a great concern to me, even while I was interim town manager, and still to the present, it's an issue, and that is, where do we construct our a new firehouse or either public safety building, because Station 1 for the firehouse is deplorable. We've been using bubble gum in order to be able to patch it up. What is the latest discussions on that? There have been different sites talked about. The Landlubber site, which is a school-owned site. There's been discussion about placing it at the Armory. Any additional conversation or information you could provide at this time, Selectman?
I'd be happy to. Let me start with the big picture. The big picture is that we have 3 buildings for police and fire that do not do their jobs now. 2 of them that are relatively new, that when they were put up, were not able to do their jobs then and don't do them now. So it's the way, my view is, it's the way we go about deciding what to do and then executing on those buildings. And if we learn from how the library was done and how the high school was done, and that's how the select board set up this building committee, was to model after that. A professional skill set from the outside, owner's project manager, architect, skill sets of people on the committee to add, various vectors of knowledge. Right. So Now the buildings. What am I talking about? Well, Station 1, the Freeman Street Fire Station, is well known. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on that. The police station building, relatively new. So the perception is, why do we need to do a new one? The building does not function, and the building does not never really functioned well. And some of my former colleagues on the board who spend more time there than I've been able to, and even some of the folks who who we had some issues with back in 2017 know full well, and they were behind dealing with that because, as one of them put it, this building never should have been built. Example, is the facilities available for the detective squad. It's like Barney Miller, okay? So private interview rooms for detectives, not there. That's, I could go on, but serious issues in the building. Station 2, the new fire station, built on wetlands with a membrane that was supposed to protect it against water seepage that tore during construction, but the building was put up over that tear anyway. We weren't able to use that for 5 years. People live in there, no dorm space, not equipped for men and women. Essentially, many things, as Chief Laracy described to the committee, didn't contemplate our needs then or now. Now, the circumstances today are building for both facilities is not practical given the economic conditions, but Station 1, the Freeman Street Station needs now. So the directions taken is to look at a fire station. What drives the decision for a fire station is response time. And every minute counts. So the committee and the architect and the project manager engaged a nationally recognized expert in response time who charted out various locations in town. I think we looked at a total of 20 for response time. The most favorable response time for the community was in that area, midsection of Park Street. Town-owned land was the Faneuil Drive Line Lumber Road site. The reason it's important for people to understand this issue is where we locate the replacement fire station means a lot as to what we need to do for building. So this goes to big picture that I talked about before. The big picture on locating this fire station, I think, needs to be a commitment to all of us that when we build it, we will build it right to do good by the people in this town. And that means response time. If we build it in that midsection of Park Street, we can build one fire station because the response time in that area between both stations makes the chief happy, makes the consultants happy, makes the committee happy. The fallback site, because the Line Lumber Road site was taken off as a preferred site by the select board, wound up to be the Armory. If we use the Armory site, we will need a third fire station now in order to get the response times we need for the south and southwest areas of Stoughton. So think about it. In our old way of deciding things, we would say, and you've heard the stories, I've heard the stories, let's say they're half right because we didn't hear them firsthand. Let's do it this way now, we'll fix it later. That's essentially what happened in Station 2 in the fire department and the police station. And guess what? We don't do it right and we don't fix it. In this case, it's life and death, right? So if we don't get to somebody who falls with a heart attack within minutes, we lose them. Why would we do that to other residents of this town? So that's the difference. Now let's talk about dollars and cents. If we say we're going to do the right thing by people, so we're going to make sure they get the response times they should have to protect them, their lives, and their property. So that is so that when we build a new one, the response time isn't worse than the old one, right? Why would you do that? We need a third station unless we locate it somewhere in that midpoint. Let's take how that affects other capital spending. The biggest area of capital spending we need to address are our school buildings. We have, come on, South School has to be addressed. The middle school has to be addressed. From what I've seen, the Wilkins School needs to be addressed. So those are gargantuan projects. Let's stick with the South School issue. whatever that solution might be. Why would we pay the capital cost if we can avoid it on a third fire station? Let's look at the math. If we build a third fire station, that physical plant will be site cost. So let's say that's $1 million for site cost. And a building. Well, if we take what we know about a fire station, that'll be a 2 or 3 bay substation. So let's look at $9 to $11 million the town will spend on that, plus operating expense for the third station. We'll need at least 2 new people for 4 shifts, so that's 8 new firefighters. That's just annual cost of about $750,000. You need new equipment. That cost is about another $1 million. And then operating cost adds close to $100,000 for a third fire station. So I look at it as, if we need to support the whole town and our largest capital needs are the schools, how do we position ourselves to do that effectively and do right by our people? So that's what led the building committee in December, January, to look at the options and say the Armory site, even though it has some attractiveness, a lot of people say, let's just convert the Armory. There's some structural reasons why that's not possible, but if we did that, we would need a third station. Look at the cost and look at the response time. And so that led to, and one of the drivers for not acquiring is there's a sense in the town we don't want to buy the property. So let's look at, again, the cost. Do we want to have to spend money to acquire a third site to do right by the people of the town, when for a way lot less money, we could acquire a site and do 1 fire station? And if we already own a site, does it make sense to talk about that? And with the cost benefit analysis of all the options, maybe that can work. In order to make this and the other projects that we need to do, we have 3 main resources, okay? One is cost. And if you've heard it, I've heard it, everybody's heard it. The existing new buildings we've got, high school, library in particular, to a lot of residents of the town, even though they're proud of it, that's a real hit for taxes that are difficult, especially during the pandemic. So it's money. The other issue is space. Where do we put it? And the third issue is volunteer time, because we rely on volunteers and volunteer committees to do the work. These are the chief resources that need to be marshaled. And that's where the conversation has to take place.
Well, I'm going to leave it for the conversation because future boards are going to have to address that. I know some of the land issues have been quite hefty conversations for sure. And so we'll have to see what bodes well. I just will leave a thought that obviously if we did select a site and we did consolidate the stations, we open up the opportunities for some of those lands to be reused for other uses and may provide some of the income. So as a lawyer that represents developers, and Bob, I know you do legal work as well in this regard, there is some benefit there, what you can do with reuse at the Armory, what you can reuse for Station 1, which is right in the center of town, et cetera. So there are some trade-offs, but I want to take us to another place because
let me just leave on this, okay?
All right.
Okay. The options you make for yourself, which is what you just described, the options you make for yourself are almost always better than the options other people leave for you because they've taken the good ones. And
okay.
of all of the things that I learned on the board, when we've succeeded in stuff, it has been because we've been able to get the board to look at picking the best options for the town and acting on them instead of saying, oh, well, we're left with this. And
right.
So let's pick our own best options.
Well, we're coming, you and I, these are definitely meaty topics, and I definitely wanted our audience to get a sense of the thinking that you had brought to the board over your 9 years of serving as a select board member. But one issue, again, that's been of issue for me has been the lack of diversity amongst the staffing in the town. And particularly now, I know in town hall, that is certainly the case. There was one person, and I think she has retired, was about to retire, who is a person of color. And, and the other piece is, I don't believe that the town has an affirmative action plan at all. Now, we have about 4 minutes to go. So I may try to throw another issue at you, but what can you be helpful in terms of where the next board can begin to look at this issue and pin down on that particular concern about the lack of diversity or affirmative action plan for the town?
The first message is for these kinds of changes to be made requires stability in the lead administrative and the lead policy levels of the town, because that stability is what promotes consistency in developing and executing those policies. Turmoil, turnover, changeover makes it difficult for consistency to develop. Second, many of the positions in town and municipal government depend on prior, or are believed to depend on prior experience in that municipal status. And so the number of people will bring diversity to town hall who have prior experience in those areas because of that is less than we would need. So we need to look at how we define and then where we go to recruit. In 3 minutes, because I see Roy holding
Well,
up
I
the
can't give
time.
you 3 minutes because I've wrongly looked at my clock, so I really have in terms of 1 minute. So I think we'll leave that question there because you and I could have gone for an hour, but why don't you have a chance to say your parting swan song to the residents you have served so well, and what would you like to say to the residents as you leave your position as a select board member?
The biggest is thank you. A friend of mine texted me yesterday and said, I've been on a wild ride for 9 years. That's true. It got a little bumpy from time to time, but I can't thank the people enough for giving me this opportunity. It was something that was enriching for me personally, and I hope I've been able to contribute to my community in the process.
Well, Bob, personally and on behalf of the Community Forum staff, I want to thank you for your service and look forward to your next chapter as far as your continued involvement in serving the town of Stoughton. So again,
Thank
my
you very
friend,
much, Jeff.
thank you so much.